Charlie Kirk was known for many things. His love of the traditional family, his hateful rhetoric towards a wide variety of groups like LGBTQ individuals, minorities, or his Christian nationalism. But to encapsulate all of this, he was known for debate.
But look, I don't blame people for saying that I'm a political guy. That is my day job, right? And so I'm focused on the second most important thing that I think a human being can focus on. So then, of course, everyone says, well, what's the first thing? Okay, well, the first thing is winning souls for Jesus Christ. Most important thing. Well, then, Charlie, what's the second thing? Let's make sure you can do the first thing.
Like, would you still support them?
If they came out as trans, I'd say, no, honey, you're a girl, or no, my son, you're a boy. I don't affirm delusions.
Oh, good God. Yeah. He's dead.
I forgive him.
He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth.
His fans would commend Kirk for being willing to debate anyone, especially those who disagreed with him. His critics would bluntly label these antics as rage bait, an attempt to speak to young adults who could hardly vote about complex topics they couldn't possibly compete with a seasoned political debater on.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Nala Ray. It's so nice to be here today. So I was one of OnlyFans' top models for the last 5 years. And I got saved, and I radically gave my life to the Lord and gave that life up.
Praise the Lord.
It's laid out in the Bible that man shall not sleep with man, and so therefore...
Well, it's also repeated throughout the New Testament as well. In the book of Matthew, Jesus reaffirms the biblical standard for marriage.
Okay, so I'm gonna...
If you had a son or a daughter and they came out to you and they said, Charlie, I'm gay, or Charlie, I'm trans, what would be your course of action in that? Like, would you still support them?
If they came out as trans, I'd say, no, honey, you're a girl, or no, my son, you're a boy. I don't affirm delusions.
But however you felt about Charlie's work, on September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at a public campus event in Utah.
Sorry to interrupt you. It is my great dishonor to be the person that says this and breaks this to you on television, but President Donald Trump is announcing on Truth Social, the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and his family.
Oh, good God. Yeah. He's dead. Dear Turning Point USA family, it's with a heavy heart that we, the Turning Point USA leadership team, write to notify you that earlier this afternoon, Charlie went to his eternal reward with Jesus Christ in heaven.
I have just received news that I'm not even going to repeat because I don't have it confirmed.
As I just mentioned, Charlie Kirk has died at a hospital in Utah. At the risk of sounding repetitive, Charlie Kirk was an incredible man. Charlie Kirk was a good friend, not just to me, for anyone who holds a microphone and anyone involved in politics.
Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth.
The media storm that followed was immediate and furious. Immediately, we saw Charlie's wife taking interviews detailing the moment that she heard the news.
Would Charlie have forgiven his killer?
He's in heaven. And he sees everything, full picture. And I truly believe that if the Lord, which this does not happen, but if the Lord gave him an option to return back to earth, and if the Lord said, this is what your death is going to be the catalyst for, do you want to go back and exchange it? He'd say no.
Wow.
He'd say no.
We saw fundraising funerals televised. We saw the memes and the jokes posted about it, and we saw an entire wave of people getting doxxed and fired over their opinions of Charlie passing. Pastors called for congregations to forgive like Erica Kirk had forgiven Charlie's killer, and publicly at that.
On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Online figureheads made statements pointing out the irony of Kirk's own comments, stating that some gun deaths every year were worth the ultimate freedom of gun ownership, when he himself became part of the statistic.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
Perhaps one of the boldest messages that took the front seat immediately was that Charlie Kirk hadn't just died. He died as a martyr.
He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth.
Charlie Kirk was not murdered, he was martyred. And there's a difference.
Give me the details. If we're talking about whether a brother was martyred or not, like, I want to know specifically what were the things that he said that weren't quote unquote giving martyr. And then we have to get into what is actually a martyr.
On our own soil today, we witnessed as the world watched a martyr. A martyr, and not only a martyr, an assassined martyr. And you might say, Jack, you can't put those two things together because an assassin is dealing with political issues, and a martyr, those are religious issues, so pick one. This is the uniqueness of Charlie Kirk. This world is so nuts, you could be dying for anything, but whatever you die for, is it worthy of your life?
And that's quite the claim. I've seen a lot of people throwing that word around, calling him a martyr, but speaking of him as a Jesus-like figure, a man yet somehow above man, who we can look to as an example of how to live our lives, how to marry, how to have children, how to go to church, and even how to vote. But when I heard the claim for the first time, my eyebrows raised. I have to be honest. I'll admit I was seeing it posted by people that I personally grew up with in evangelical homeschool circles. I disagreed with their opinion of Charlie as a martyr, of course, but we'd just seen someone pass away before our eyes. I was hopeful that it was a phrase that would stay within the more fundamentalist conservative circles at a grassroots level in Minnesota, rather than something that made headlines around the nation and globally.
The other thing I would say, and I do not use this word lightly, I do not think it's incorrect to call Charlie Kirk a modern American martyr for the faith. Some of Charlie Kirk's last words were to look out at a crowd of hostile, unbelieving college students.
Charlie Kirk was a Christian martyr. He didn't just die for free speech. He didn't just die for the conservative movement. He didn't just die for MAGA. He ultimately died for standing on the truth of Jesus Christ.
I asked God what happens to Christian martyrs when they get to heaven. And when God answered me, he showed me Charlie Kirk and what happened when he got to heaven. The whole story is on the podcast, but here's the biggest takeaway. And I almost didn't post this because to post anything, about Charlie Kirk can invite a lot, but I think it's what he would have wanted because it's a message for you. When he saw Jesus, he was just kind of shocked. I was just seeing this from a distance.
I had a few issues with the claim. Whether or not you like or agree with Charlie Kirk and his message, I don't believe that the phrase martyr, in terms of martyr for the Christian faith, makes sense. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a martyr is somebody who is defined as, 1, a person who voluntarily suffers death as the penalty for declaring belief in and refusing to renounce a religion, or 2, a person who sacrifices something of great value and especially life itself for the sake of principle. But many of us already knew that definition. The word martyr is no stranger to the evangelical congregations around America. There was an entire campaign around the fabricated story that Cassie, a young girl at the Columbine High School massacre, said yes when asked by the shooter if she believed in God. She was allegedly subsequently murdered. And there are plenty of videos on how that story was altered, fabricated entirely, and didn't even happen to the girl that they said it did. But the point stood.
She said yes, and he shot her and she died. And he found Rachel Joy Scott and he said, "Do you believe in God?" She said yes, and he shot her and she didn't die. And he said it again, "Do you still believe in God?" She said yes, and he shot her and she died. And I think that's so awesome to me that in this place where we worry what somebody's going to say about us, that you look something in the face knowing that there was a God. She knew what was going to happen after you pulled that trigger. And I'm just, song's called Cassie. I will say yes!
So in my opinion, this book is one of the most disgusting things ever that I honestly completely forgot about until I saw some recent TikToks kind of dredging this up again. But for those who don't know what this is a book written by the mother of a victim of Columbine. It's based off of the story that one of the perpetrators went up to this girl and said, "Do you believe in God?" And she supposedly said yes, and then they pew-pewed and unalived her. Except that never happened. That conversation sort of occurred with another girl who was in the library at the time who lived, but this never happened to this girl. And yet this girl's mother heard the rumor, wrote a book about it. It was published something ridiculous like 6 months after this event happened. And the evangelical community went wild with this.
I myself recall praying at night, asking God to give me the strength to say yes when I was inevitably in this situation. It was like the evangelical child quicksand. You think you're going to encounter it everywhere, but you never do. Many of us were also subjected to stories or movies like The End of the Spear, which was a story about missionaries who visited an uncontacted tribe in the name of Jesus and were speared to death.
We have one chance to reach these people.
No one's ever made contact with these people and lived to talk about it.
Daddy loves you.
Company.
Dad, are you okay? Please pick up.
So far, we found 4 of them.
Are we going to run?
No.
The visual of the man standing in water and getting speared and dying, his family later planning on returning, if I remember the plot correctly, it's off the top of my head, so correct me, that scene really stuck with me. He was hailed as a martyr, but critics later would point out in that story that the dangers had been told to him and were well known. This tribe didn't want to be contacted and wanted people to respect that. Critics would ask, was he a martyr, or was he disrespecting an entire community? And although I think both examples, the Cassie story and the story that I just told you about End of the Spear, even though both examples were highly popularized and even though they both had valid criticisms, the base story involves people dying on purpose for their faith. For good or for bad, a martyr. They made that conscious choice. They chose to die for that cause, right? They stared down death for the belief in their faith, or at least they believed so, or at least that's how the story goes. But Charlie did something different. He was certainly a Christian, but was he killed for his faith? Was it for his Christian beliefs? Was it for the love of Jesus? And beyond that, was he aware that he was making that choice? These are essential questions we have to ask before we deem someone a martyr, the equivalent of an evangelical saint.
Why don't you think he's a martyr? And it's like, because I heard what he said.
Yeah. Right.
I hear other things alongside that don't give martyr.
I think it's really dangerous to depict Charlie Kirk as a martyr because martyrs historically died for rejecting the status quo. Charlie Kirk was the status quo. He was funded by the status quo to ensure that it stayed the status quo. His death was horrible, but I don't think you can call him brave. To be brave, you have to be risking something. And what was he risking as a white American conservative cis straight man? What was he risking? He was risking other people's lives, other people's rights, other people's safety. All of those topics, women's rights, queer rights, immigration, he could afford to bravely advocate for what he believed in because none of those things affected him. He wasn't risking anything by taking away rights from those groups of people. You've probably seen that video of him answering that hypothetical that yes, his 10-year-old daughter should carry her rapist baby to term because all of these things to him are just hypothetical. And in that video, he says, oh, that's quite a graphic example. Yeah, Charlie, because those things happen. Those graphic things, those hypotheticals aren't hypotheticals for anyone who isn't you. And it never seems to directly affect you. Even gun violence, when he said it was worth to have gun deaths to protect the Second Amendment, he thought that he was exempt from experiencing gun violence, when he very much wasn't. This gross pageantry of dressing up hatred as Christianity, I find deeply uncomfortable. That Erica comes on stage to forgive her shooter to thunderous applause, and then you've got Trump saying that he hates over half of the country. In America, at least, it seems like Christianity has become a tool used to advocate for all of the things that Christianity is supposedly against.
Charlie Kirk was not a Christian martyr. I must say this again. Charlie Kirk was not a Christian martyr. Charlie Kirk was not killed because he was a Christian. Now, mind you, I'm not the killer, so maybe.
But many Christians were not asking this question. For example, in The American Mind, they say, in this way, Charlie Kirk was perhaps the closest thing to Socrates in the American public square. He argued amiably, fairly, relentlessly, until they couldn't stand it any longer. And like Socrates, they had him killed. And also like Socrates, his students will now do more for his cause after his martyrdom than they ever did during his life. The Socratic vindication was in his deification through literature at the pens of Plato and Xenophon. Millennia later, everyone remembers the philosopher, but vanishingly few know who ended his life. The armies of Charlie Kirk, martyr, will be much more vast. Not a handful of Athenians, but millions of Americans. Their work will not be in philosophical literature, but in the politics of the years to come. Whatever benefit accrues to the Republican Party is merely incidental. We are now in the realm of fundamental politics, which is concerned with the nature of the nation and the wielding of power for the common good. End quote. According to that article, Charlie Kirk is compared to Socrates. Fine. But what interests me is their acknowledgement that his justice was in the deification, the making of him like God, the turning of him into a godlike figure. They acknowledge the intentional process of doing that, of deifying someone after they die, of intentionally turning them into a figurehead that comes second only to Jesus, a modern prophet, this generation's modern martyr. And that's exactly what I believe it is, an intentional process. While the word martyr focuses on Kirk's religious beliefs, his Christianity, the reality is that Kirk was not known first and foremost for his faith, despite him saying that's what he wanted to be known for.
Faith is central to who you are, what you do, and I'm not going to say your politics are formed from that, but your life approach is basically biblically based.
Yeah. I've been a Christian since 5th grade, and I've always just kind of been a political animal. I've just kind of enjoyed trying to call out lies and deceit and untruth and mistruths, I guess you could say. I will be honest though, in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, I felt a lot more passive about talking about my faith because I was kind of told not to, both by pastors and politicians.
Wow.
If you think about it, pastors are like, don't you dare bring that in here. Don't bring it in the church. I grew up in a church environment that you do not talk about politics. You do not talk about philosophy. You just talk about the Bible. We just do the gospel. That's it. Which of course is, I believe, unbiblical. Right? Wow. Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Esther, Mordecai, Daniel, amongst many others, were all political figures.
Yes.
Fasted and prayed for the nation.
Even Deborah.
Yeah, exactly. The counselors to the king.
Yes.
So there's many examples of that. But then also politicians like, oh, no, keep that Christian stuff away. We just care about tax cuts and all this other nonsense. But look, I don't blame people for saying that I'm a political guy. That is my day job, right? And so I'm focused on the second most important thing that I think a human being can focus on. So then, of course, everyone says, what's the first thing? Okay, well, the first thing is winning souls for Jesus Christ.
His Christianity was part of the package, sure, but only wrapped up in Christian nationalism, which is not at all a faith, but a political and sociological ideology and framework that turns Judeo-Christian ideals into law. To call Christian nationalism a faith would be to call the military a group of monks. He was a political figure. He may have used religion to back his political points, but it was never really about that.
Tonight we look back at the life of Charlie Kirk through his own words and those who knew and admired him.
His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever.
It's just not kind of a loss of words.
How do you do a show when you talk about a man who you were texting with yesterday?
Ask ourselves, is this it? Is this what 250 years has wrought on us?
Free speech is our birthright as Americans. When you have free speech, we're going to get closer to the truth.
I founded Turning Point USA to tell young people in America that there's a better way than big government and old school corruption.
You know how we heal our divides? By talking to people we disagree with.
Young people are idealists. They respond to vision.
I don't know who else captures the spirit of this moment in history for young people more than Charlie Kirk did.
I've followed Charlie for a long time. He was an inspiration to a lot of college students for free speech.
He really got me into paying attention to the election last year and what I wanted to vote for.
To watch him grow and watch the movement that he started just touched so many hearts and souls.
We will be in heaven, and that we will be in perfect peace, and that this is not it.
If you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith.
Turning Point wasn't turning people to Christ. He was a political debater, someone who had close ties to the Trump administration and was viewed as being a key piece of Trump's election and re-election. But beyond his politics, he was assassinated. No one saw it coming. He didn't know that he was staring in the face of death when he picked up the microphone that day. And his final words were about gun and gang violence, not about Jesus Christ. All of these things matter. Words matter. Definitions matter. And when it comes to the word martyr, we know that there must be two things. Intent, one, on the side of the aggressor, and two, intent or willingness on the side of the victim. To be a martyr means to intentionally die in an effort to take a stand for your faith. Do you guys feel that that is the case here? Let me know, and let me know alongside it if you are pro or anti Charlie Kirk and his beliefs. I think that we get a bit closer to the truth when we look at what was published by the National Catholic Register. All of that helps to clarify the issues in the case of Charlie Kirk. He died a dramatic death, slain while exercising his public work, very much in the public eye. What might he be a martyr for? The easiest classification to argue for is that he is a political martyr for the Trump agenda, a martyr for MAGA. At the event at which he was killed, he was distributing Trump hats. In his studio, he had 2 portraits of the president. He was a relentless advocate for Trump, rarely, if ever, blanching from even the president's more outrageous claims. If the killer was motivated by anti-Trump animus, clearly Kirk would be a target. The memorial in Phoenix had 2 dominant themes, one political, advanced by the long parade of administration officials, and the other Christian, presented by his widow, a Catholic, and the worship leaders. Vance pointed out that our whole administration was present, and the principal speakers were mostly Trump officials, including several cabinet secretaries, akin to a party convention. Trump offered his own consideration of Kirk as a martyr of America's freedom, which is a stronger claim. That kind of civic martyrdom emphasizes Kirk's commitment to a foundational principle of liberal democracy, specifically freedom of speech and open exchange, as well as to a certain view of civic renewal. Kirk could plausibly be considered a martyr for some of America's founding principles. End quote. That is a definition that I could slightly more get behind, and I appreciated their honesty at the Catholic Register. The article seems to view Kirk's politics favorably, which I do not, obviously, if you've watched any of my other videos on him. But at the very least, they have identified that Kirk did not die for the Christian faith, and to call him a martyr in their eyes would require the classifier that he was a political martyr, a martyr for politics. Perhaps Kirk did not know that by speaking the way he did about the things he did, that he was at a risk of violence. But if he knew, he could have been, in their eyes apparently, fighting for a conservative Republican white nationalism, though not Christian conversion. These things are distinctly different. He wasn't volunteering or arguing apologetics. He was telling queer people they were going against God and shouldn't have children and that they were going to hell. He was implying that women shouldn't vote. He was blatantly arguing that women should be exclusively homemakers and mothers and wives. He said heinous things about minority groups and many others. But enough on definitions. I've made it clear that I don't believe Charlie was a martyr, but if he was one, if we must call him one, then he was one for Christian nationalism, which is again distinctly different from Christianity or a true faith practice, which he may have had. Why do people want him to be labeled as a martyr? The answer, I think, has less to do with Charlie Kirk himself than it does with the power that martyr stories hold within Christianity. Even more specifically, the power that they hold within evangelical culture in America. Christianity is a religion built upon stories, real or interpreted, of sacrifice. Jesus, the primary figure of the religion, was publicly executed. His death became the foundation for the entire faith. The earliest Christian communities preserved stories of the believers who willingly faced imprisonment and faced death rather than renounce their convictions, which we see detailed biblically and elsewhere. Because of this history, martyrdom carries enormous symbolic weight, and people are already prepared to respond to this type of story in a specific way. Besides, to call somebody a martyr is not simply to describe how they died. It's also to make a statement about what their life represented, what their death represented, and to elevate them beyond a political activist, pastor, or public speaker. It places them into a category that demands your respect. A martyr is not merely remembered, they are revered. Just as the Bible says that because the world hated Jesus first, it will hate us too, people incorrectly make the jump that others who are hated broadly must be doing something right. Beyond this, for decades, American evangelicals have embraced what the layperson would call a persecution complex.
It's no secret that Christians are persecuted more than any other conceivable category of person.
So here's my theory about where the Christian persecution complex comes from. The Bible says that people who are actually following Christ will be persecuted. If you're of the world, if you're doing worldly sinful things, then the world is going to love you. They're only going to hate you if you're doing godly, righteous things. And the implication here, of course, is that if you aren't being persecuted, then you have to wonder if you're even a real Christian. And that's a hella uncomfortable thing to think about. So what are a bunch of privileged Christians living in the United States supposed to do with that? They literally hold all the power, but their Bible tells them that if they're really Christians, they won't be powerful at all. They'll be persecuted. They either have to question their Bible, question their faith, or interpret things as persecution that aren't. So they end up interpreting every tiny criticism, every little pushback, every loss of complete power as persecution. The complex is a feature.
Despite Christians remaining one of the most politically and culturally influential groups in the United States, many evangelical leaders have continued to warn congregations across America that Christianity is under attack. Evangelical Christians everywhere have been told that secular culture hates them, that universities are hostile to them and to their faith and will discriminate against them, and that the government is targeting them. There are books, sermons, documentaries, conferences, and political pains, all that are there just to repeatedly reinforce the idea that Christians are a minority fighting against a culture that doesn't want them there in the first place. It's not true. The problem is that not every tragedy is persecution. The problem is that not every victim is a martyr, especially when you are a white male Christian living in America. People are prepared to respond to death and tragedy in this way. It's almost a built-in coping mechanism when tragedy strikes. Actual circumstances become less important than the symbolic role that the person can play for the movement in the future. Like when the Columbine massacre happened, the story in Christian communities wasn't about gun violence or mental health or anything actually relating to preventing tragedy in the future. It was about drawing inspiration from saying yes and implying that Christian families could be expected to make a similar choice coming to a school near them soon. It was horrific. No one dared look at the story and say they were children and victims at that. Instead, pastors took their stories and used them as the reality that we will all have to live out the biblical promise that we will all face trials of many kinds. This process is not unique to Christianity. Political movements do it, countries do it, social causes use it. Human beings are natural storytellers. We like stories. I myself do. But what fascinates me is how quickly that process seemed to begin immediately following Charlie Kirk's death. Within hours, discussions about his actual work, his rhetoric, and political influence were all being replaced by discussions about his legacy and about exactly what that legacy would be and how it would be continued. The entire conversation had shifted away from evaluating a public figure to protecting a symbol, whether or not that symbol is an accurate depiction of who that person really was. That transformation is precisely what martyrdom accomplishes. A martyr is useful because a martyr can't respond or speak for themselves. A martyr can't evolve or clarify their points. They can't contradict themselves or make themselves look bad. Their story has concluded. Supporters can highlight the parts they like and critics can clip parts they don't. And what was once a highly controversial person raking in millions can now be adjusted and molded into whatever public version the organization wants them to have.
Hello, everybody. Charlie Kirk here. You may know me from Turning Point USA or from our podcast or radio show, but I'm here tonight to share a couple things with you. First, I just want to share my personal faith walk with you. I gave my life to the Lord in 5th grade. It's actually a Christian Heritage Academy in the suburbs of Chicago. Many of you may have heard of it. And when I came in contact with a couple of teachers that told me that I needed to give my life to Christ, it just spoke to my heart. And every year as I have got older, my walk with Christ has strengthened and has meant more to me every single year. I'm focused on the second most important thing that I think a human being can focus on. So then, of course, everyone says, what's the first thing? Okay, well, the first thing is winning souls for Jesus Christ, the most important thing. Well, then, Charlie, what's the second thing? To make sure you can do the first thing.
Charlie was a believer, a follower of Jesus Christ.
Charlie was bigger than life. His voice, unbelievable. He's this beacon of light. He's such a brilliant mind. He was able to bring light in the midst of darkness.
Calling him a martyr does not primarily tell us something about Charlie Kirk. It tells us something about the groups of people who are making the claim. It tells us something that they want to make the claim to begin with. If Kirk is understood as a Christian martyr, then his death becomes evidence of anti-Christian persecution. If the memes were about his faith rather than his harmful views on things, that means that Christians everywhere can't trust their neighbors. If he is understood as a political martyr, then his death becomes evidence that the political movement he represented is under attack, which Christians are trying to believe indicates that that means it's the right movement. I believe that from a perspective of deconstruction, one of the most valuable lessons we can learn is to turn complicated human beings into flat symbols. Deconstruction often involves learning to sit with complexity rather than rushing towards certainty. It asks us to examine the stories we have inherited and question whether they accurately reflect reality. It teaches us that humans are never as simple as the stories that we want to tell about them. And maybe that is one of the reasons why I hesitate so strongly when I do hear Charlie Kirk described as a martyr. Not because I lack empathy or because I celebrate violence or anything like that. It's because words matter. Definitions matter. History matters, and the continued manipulation of Christians in America through Christian nationalism disgusts me greatly. And this feels like a clear and bold extension of that. We can condemn violence without creating a martyr to go alongside it. We can mourn a human life without transforming that life into something that it wasn't.